Hello. Good afternoon. All right, going to call this meeting to order. Shu.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the work session. Today, at our work session, we will only have one item, and it's me again. We'll have the discussion for the final study that we conducted a few years ago to talk about the east-west connection and how we're going to overcome the barrier that's been put in place by Highway 35 and 29. So here I have Jay Aber with me, and he has a presentation, and we'll be listening to your questions and concerns after his presentation.
Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. Ooh, a little coming in hot here. All right, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for having me here tonight. As Shu said, we are going to talk through the East-West Connection study that was begun about a little over a year ago now. We've done a lot of public engagement, a lot of coordination with MoDOT, a lot of public or technical design concepts and cost estimates and renderings and all kinds of fun stuff. So we have not presented to council about this, so I'm going to go through the whole process, the focus group, everything we've done, all the coordination with MoDOT, traffic engineering, all that good stuff, and then primarily want to get your feedback on any concerns, questions, comments you have about it that we can incorporate then into the final plan. So I'm just going to go through background on the project, the outreach we've done to date so far, and then the proposed improvements we have. So these are the objectives of the project. This was a Planning Sustainable Places project that was funded 80% through the Mid-America Regional Council. The program is every 2 years. It's funded through Surface Transportation Block Grants for the most part. And it's focused on projects like this, projects that create a more sustainable future for the Mid-America Regional Council area, the Kansas City metro area, and looks a lot at multimodal development, land use planning, and generally how do we create a more sustainable community. So this was really focused on those improvements, serving people walking and biking under I-29, I-35 on Armour Road. A big part of this was coordinating with MoDOT throughout the process. The entire project is within the MoDOT right-of-way, so obviously coordinating with MoDOT was a very important part of it. And then developing implementation plans. So you all have something to go on when you're doing capital improvement planning, budgeting for implementation of the project. This is our project area. So we are this section of Armour Road from Ozark to Taney and focus solely on the interchange area going under the bridge, not really on the whole interchange. We were looking at the ramps, we weren't looking at the main line of I-35. But just that part under the bridge on Armour Road. A little background of why we're here. I think many of you will probably recall the bicycle master plan that was done a few years ago. This section under I-35 was identified on this low-stress network, a desire for facilities that anybody, kids, unskilled or unsure adults riding, biking, walking, can get under the bridge to reconnect the city across this major barrier. So you can see our project area right there. In the green is that level of traffic stress 1 facility for all users. As part of that project, we asked the public what were the priorities, and the bar on the very far left is this project. This is the connection under I-35. It was rated as the #1 priority project in the city by the public through that process. And that's what really led to kicking off this study. There's been a lot of history in the study area. 2006, sidewalks were added on the north side. Prior to that, there were no sidewalks at all through the interchange. 2008 to 2011 was a reconstruction of the ramps. There was a major reconstruction of the interchange. There was a lot of safety issues out there. It used to be a full cloverleaf interchange, like a a system interchange would be from one highway to the next, and then they changed it to be more of a traditional urban interchange with traffic signals. In 2017, Taney reconstructed, Diamond Parkway was reconstructed as part of the Armour Road redevelopment area, and the cycle track was built there. At the same time, sidewalks were also added on the south side of the road, so we do have sidewalks on both sides, which is a major benefit to the area. And then in 2019, as part of the Quick Trip redevelopment project, the high-speed right turn lane for the southbound ramps was removed. Again, that was another big safety improvement for the area. Also removed the high-speed right turn at Ozark coming onto Armour Road, and then added the crosswalk on the east side of Ozark. Prior to that, there was only a crosswalk on the west side of Ozark crossing Armour Road. So just some of the challenges in the area. I think you all are probably very familiar with this area for the most part, but these are some of the pictures we presented to the focus group and to the public in our online survey, just highlighting some of those issues and some of the things that people talk to us a lot about. Especially concerned where the uncontrolled right turns, where a pedestrian has to cross high-speed right-turning traffic with no traffic control, very little signage. Obviously, the narrow nature of the sidewalk under the bridge, it's good that we have sidewalks at all. There's a lot of interchanges that don't have sidewalks, but they are very narrow. There's barriers on both sides that make them feel even more constrained, and there's a lot of debris and trash and other things on the sidewalk under the bridge that make it challenging. I think there's actually a trash can in that picture, really small if you look, so there's maybe some grassroots efforts to manage that out there. Another really big issue is where the pedestrians cross those right turn ramps onto the interchange. It's very dark under the bridge, and the crosswalk is directly in the sun for the most part when you exit the bridge, so you can see in that picture on the left how bright it is when cars exit, and on the right exactly where that pedestrian crossing is. It's on the turn, it's behind the barrier, it's right when you get out in front of the bridge, so it's very challenging visibility perspective. Same issues on the east side. Those were pictures from the west side, primarily on the south. These are from the east side and on the north, similar issues, the right turn lanes and the narrow constrained corridor. So we did a good bit of outreach for this. We had convened a focus group. We met with them twice, and we also did a public survey. So we first met with that focus group July 21st, 2021. We talked to them about improvement options, how to prioritize those improvements. We took a lot of those improvement options, had the public survey September 21st, to October 21st, 2021, 229 responses, had very similar feedback to what we heard from the focus group. Everyone was really on the same page with what they were interested in and the issues that were out there. And then January 25th of this year, we presented the concepts, the various concepts to the focus group again, asked them their input, and then brought that into the concept planning process as we finalize the concept. This is just a list of the focus group members. I think we had really good engagement from them, a lot of great feedback, and a very good group to work with. The first meeting, we asked the focus group if they've walked or biked under I-29 to describe their experience. I think this probably mirrors your experiences if you've walked or biked under there. Word cloud, obviously loud, unsafe, and scary come to the top there. So not a particularly pleasant experience. We also asked them what the greatest opportunity would be out there, and there was a whole lot of feedback, but this is just a brief sampling of that. Talking about accessibility, feeling connected between all wards, linking people together, connecting the growing areas, a safer route to Helen's got on there as well, and then generally connecting the facilities that have already been built in the city to each other. We asked the public in the public survey to talk about what their feelings were on the corridor. This was one question where we asked them how they felt about the safety, comfort, convenience, and overall experience, with 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and we got in the 3s, so not great, as you would probably expect. And we also asked them about these improvements that the focus group came up with in terms of what they were interested in seeing, asked them to prioritize those, and those top 3, improving crosswalks, especially the crossings across the right turn lanes, the high-speed right turn lanes, improve lighting under the bridge, and widen sidewalk or trail were the very top items there. Do want to mention that constructing levee trail was up there. That's something we considered with this. This would be a levee trail on the north side of the city, on the north levee trail. We basically acknowledge that that's a good effort. That's something that would be a benefit to the community, but it really was just outside the scope of this project and not something we could focus on with this project, focusing on the interchange. And so that did lead to the application for the Planning Sustainable Places project for this year's cycle, the multi-county connection project that is going to look at that connection along the levee as well. So I did want to acknowledge that that's in the plan, but not something we addressed directly with this plan. And then improving maintenance was another big one out there to include. Some of the things that the public was less focused on was the bicycle facilities, decreasing traffic speed, and improved landscaping. They were really just focused on getting something built out there. These other things might have been a benefit, but not their primary focus. So we had the focus group again in January. We had a lot of concepts, which I'll go through in just a minute. We asked their feedback on those concepts, got some really good input. And again, their greatest desire was really to get that shared use path or widened sidewalks or trails, what have you, built through the interchange. But really a place where cyclists and pedestrians can get through the interchange comfortably and safely. And they really were very focused on making sure any path down there was physically protected from traffic. So they didn't want just a sidewalk with a curb and gutter next to it. They really wanted something that had some kind of a physical barrier, a jersey barrier, or a crash barrier in between the sidewalk and the traffic. So gets us to our proposed options. These were the things that we primarily focused on: crosswalk improvements, lighting under the bridge, and maintenance, cleaning of sidewalks are things that we will note as very important. I'm primarily going to go through these geometric recommendations, though, in terms of how the road or the sidewalk could look differently. So we did also do a traffic analysis. One of these options, a couple of the options changed how the traffic would flow. One of them looked at putting pedestrian facilities where the current right turn ramp is, going behind the columns, so at the very outside of the roadway, adjacent to the current outside walls. That would change how the traffic got onto I-35. It would make a big impact to that traffic, so we analyzed that. Another one of the options includes, right now there are 3 eastbound lanes under the bridge. There used to be 3 westbound lanes under the bridge as well, but those were converted to 2 westbound lanes under the bridge a few years ago by MoDOT. And one of these options would also convert the eastbound lanes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes and match that same cross-section that's on the westbound lanes today. So there would be a reduction in one travel lane under the bridge in the eastbound direction. We did a lot of simulation. We did a micro-simulation model using the VisSim software. I think you all have probably seen this in the past, but it models traffic in a very natural way, and that it has a distribution of driver behaviors and models them actually driving through there. So we can tell the differences, especially with closely spaced intersections where they interact with each other a lot. We did a simulation. We reviewed this with MoDOT. MoDOT's very particular about these types of simulations, so we worked with their engineers to make sure they reviewed it. They were comfortable with how it was set up and what the results were. And those results were essentially that these different options we looked at had really no change to the traffic. So this shows the level of service at the different intersections. On the left, Armour and Ozark. Then going to the right, we have the I-35 southbound ramps. Then the I-35 northbound ramps, which would be on the east side of the highway, and then Armour and Taney. And with the changes to the traffic, the reduction in the one lane, or the removal of the right turn, free right turn ramp, there was really no change in the traffic volume, or sorry, the level of service out there. So the concepts that we looked at, we explored with the focus group for this path were 3 primary concepts, looking at the ramp, the path that goes south of the bridge columns where that right turn lane currently exists, that we figured could be built as a 16-foot wide path, barrier protected, and then looking at a 10-foot wide shared use path and the outside eastbound drive lane today, so that would be the reduction from 3 lanes to 2 lanes in the eastbound direction, and then would use that extra space for the trail. And then a very similar thing on the north side of the road, using the westbound lane. There's some space that was actually given back in the middle of the road where there's an expanded island there that would be swapped to give that space back to the outside of the road. So this is that first option, that 16-foot ramp. The traffic today comes back here behind the bridge columns and makes the loop onto I-35. That traffic would then use the outside lane, make a right turn, more similar to a typical interchange, right onto the ramp, and then this shared use path would go behind the columns there. That next option, again, keeps that right turn lane intact right here, and then this would cross that right turn lane here and use that outside ramp space for the shared use path. And then the other side, something very similar, crossing the ramp at this location before you go into the bridge, and then coming in that outside roadway space. So when we talked to focus group, they really preferred that 16-foot shared use path behind the columns. They were very excited about the fact that it was protected. It had a lot of room. Unfortunately, though, when we went to MoDOT to talk through this, they identified some safety issues with that, primarily where the pedestrians would cross the ramp. There's a bridge column very close to that, so it'd be very difficult for drivers who are turning right to see pedestrians or cyclists in the crosswalk entering the roadway there. They initially had a concern. We did some more calculations. We found that would be the case, that would be a sight distance issue and would create a potential safety issue. So we really deemed that infeasible because of those issues. The focus group did not prefer those 10-foot paths adjacent to the travel lanes, but a lot of their concern was with the fact that it was a little narrower and the fact that what we originally showed, because we hadn't done the engineering investigation, that there was no barrier between that path and the driving cars. So you'd be directly adjacent to traffic with just a curb there, and they had a lot of concerns with that. So what we did, we went back, talked to MoDOT, did some more investigation, and the preferred concept does keep the shared use path in that space, but it is 12 feet wide and it is protected by a barrier from the traffic. So there's space for a jersey barrier there and a 12-foot trail. And actually there's a little bit more space probably in there because there's another foot or two before you hit the bridge columns. So it might actually ultimately become 13, 14 foot wide is the total space you could have under the bridge. So we felt that this option, because it did provide the barrier protection and it provided the wider path that the public or the focus group was interested in, that this would be a good option to present to you. So this is a top-down view of that option. You can see those trails as they go through there are continuous, and where they have crossings, I'll show a few renderings of exactly what that looks like so you can see a little more detail. This is just a bit of a zoomed-in view. So you do cross those right turn lanes, those ramps at these locations. One thing to note is that the crossings where these happen at the right turn ramps are in much more visible places. They're before you go into the bridge, so they don't have that same issue with driver visibility of it being dark under the bridge and emerging. And you do have a lot longer distance of sight line to those crossings. So these next couple slides just go through some images, some renderings showing what this looks like. So this is a view as you walk past Quick Trip and you come to that first ramp. So we do have that crossing. We are recommending something I think you all will appreciate, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons that we've discussed in the past. That would be proposed for all the crossings. So there is a very visible signage and a bright flashing beacon. So as the pedestrians cross, they will have that, and those right turning cars will have a lot more visibility into the pedestrians making that crossing. So this is that next crossing across the right turn ramp that goes under the bridge and behind the bridge columns. Again, the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, a much more kind of typical perpendicular crossing to the road in a place that's very visible, as opposed to the skewed crossing that's at the turn right now as it happens on the other side of the bridge. View from the other side of the bridge looking back to the west. So Mirota's is down in the bottom there. This is looking under the bridge to the west, but these are the eastbound lanes, so you can see how there were 3 lanes there. In this proposed option, there are 2 lanes, and then that wide, 12-foot wide path with that barrier protection in between. This shows that same area, that same crossing, but in the other direction, so looking to the east. You can see the fencing for Moroto's off to the right there, and then the widened trail. There is a nice sidewalk there, but it's a 5-foot wide sidewalk. This would expand it to 12-foot wide, that entire length, and then also propose those trees in that area. This is on the north side of the road, so crossing that same crossing, or that right turn lane, again with the flashing beacons, with the very visible marked crosswalk and visible signage there. This is the crossing of the right turn ramp. Same setup as on the south side of the highway, or of Varma Road. And then looking back at that, you can really see the distance that drivers will be able to see that. They'll be coming in a straight line towards that, have very good visibility of that crossing location. So it should be much safer than is today. And then just a view over to the west of the westbound ramps, widening that sidewalk all the way to Ozark. And one thing I did want to note, we did look at the lighting options. That was something that was very important to people. We felt that it was very dark under there, both in the day and at night. And so what we did is we rendered that with what is pretty photorealistic techniques for the lighting, and show on the left is what that would look like with the lighting that's out there today. There's just one set of lights in the middle of the bridge. This is typical bridge lighting standards. But after we looked at it, because of the length of the bridge, because there are no openings in the bridge, there's no space in the middle for any light to penetrate, it really should probably be built with tunnel lighting standards. And those tunnel lighting standards are what we show on the right side there. So you can see much brighter, even with the daylight there, it should be much brighter, and then at night it should be quite bright.
So is that work MoDOT would do?
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Nice.
So just to kind of wrap this up, we do have a few videos here. This is starting from Quick Trip, going to the east. You can see how the ramps are there. You see the crossing of both of those crossings of the right turn lanes, and how that looks under the bridge. Again, notice the 2 eastbound traffic lanes there instead of 3. That third lane is traded for the barrier-protected 12-foot crosswalk. And again, you can see there is a little bit more space on the right side of that trail today. We don't have actual survey on this for doing this design, but we're fairly confident in the dimensions that we have in there. And then exiting the bridge, the Moroto fence is on the right there. And then this is from the east side looking west, so drivers traveling in the westbound direction, and the trail on the north side of Armour Road there. A nice wide trail. You can see the crossing from a very long distance away in a very visible spot with those rapid rectangular flashing beacons, the safety beacons, the warning beacons for pedestrians, and again, the same 12-foot wide trail. Absolutely. Well, if I can figure it out, I might just have to restart it. How about that? I'm just glad the videos actually work in my PowerPoint, so. Yep. Yeah, and I can understand the concern there, and I think that the answer is probably yes. I think that's this is the kind of feedback we want for this meeting and things that we would, if this went to preliminary engineering or final engineering, things to include in that. I think that'd be something to talk with MoDOT about and their standards for those barriers, but I think your point is well taken, and that is something that we'll note down that should be considered in that final design.
Scoot up to your mic.
Sorry. As drivers are approaching the crosswalk that's essentially perpendicular to the flow of traffic, this one right here in front of us, is there anything that could be put there to like physically narrow, kind of like what we've done at Howell Street, where drivers will have to kind of slow down to shoot the gap between two barriers that would like make them slow down and focus, rather than this is a lot of pavement, they can kind of fly on through there. I know that's a technique used in other parts of the world, is to like physically confine the space, whether it's something decorative or whatever, but to make them feel like they need to slow down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, so what we showed today is this existing curb line on the outside here. It's kind of unnecessarily wide.
Are you
narrowing.
drawing on the screen with your mouse? 'Cause
Yeah,
you keep
can
saying
not
here
see
and
that?
we don't see
Oh,
it.
hey,
Okay.
my mouse doesn't show up. How about that?
I
Okay.
mean, generally I knew what you're talking about, but you here,
yeah.
I'm not seeing it. Okay.
So the curb adjacent to the new shared use path's existing curb, and there's kind of an awkward gore area there that's not really used for anything. I think that could certainly be extended out to follow the striping there, and it's the same thing on the inside. I think physically narrowing that lane any more than it is probably something MoDOT would have issues with, just because it is an entrance to an interstate. There is a lot of trucking going through there, so making that narrower 9-10 feet would be kind of challenging. But I think there could be some extensions of the curb that could address that issue a little bit.
I mean, not even narrowing the lane, but like, I don't know, vertically, like just making the space feel tighter rather than actually confining it in. Anyways, go ahead. Councilmember Saper.
Yeah. So far, you've talked and shown a lot of pictures of cars, and you just mentioned that there are trucks, 40-foot or longer vehicles, trying to get onto this federal highway.
Microphone.
Some of these ramps seem to be, one, if you narrow them too much, it's going to be it'd be difficult and maybe dangerous for trucks. Number two, some of the crosswalks are positioned such that if you've got trucks stopped there, two 45-foot long vehicles, you'd be blocking other lanes, through lanes. Has MoDOT commented on any of that?
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up. That's a very important consideration. MoDOT certainly would never support anything that would limit truck access to the area. They are very focused on making sure we maintain that mobility. We have obviously a lot of shipping in this area, a lot of logistics, very important. So we did look at the truck turning paths, the 53-foot trailer with the sleeper cab, the largest truck. We looked at those. We got those reviewed by MoDOT. So as it stands today, this design, as I said, we don't have a survey. This isn't final design. That'd be something to continue to consider throughout final design. But that was something that's important and that we'll notice continuing to be important throughout. But I think you can be assured that MoDOT would not approve any design that restricted any kind of access for semi-trucks in the area.
Well, not only access, but I'm thinking about, again, if you have 100-foot of trucks, two trucks stopped at a crosswalk, it would be blocking other lanes according to the presentation. Through lanes on some of the ramps.
So we did so this model does not show the trucks, partly just because of the way the rendering is done. With the traffic modeling we did, it did include the semi-trucks in there. And so there's nothing that we saw that would be a fatal flaw where trucks would be blocking a pedestrian crossing through here.
Not talking about pedestrian crossing, but blocking other through lanes because of the distance they would be in the access ramp.
Yeah, understood.
They actually just touched on one of the questions I had, which was the flashing beacons. Are they, I think for the video I saw, I think they're push button operated.
That's correct.
And are they on timers?
Yeah, they flash for a certain amount of time, so they are not a
There's
legal.
not a sensor that, like, so if you're on a bicycle, you have to, like, push the button. It doesn't, like, sense you coming and automatically flash.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
They're a lot less expensive than a traffic signal installation, and as such, they do have the accessible push buttons for the handicap accessibility, but they don't have any kind of smart sensors or anything, any cameras that could detect someone there. So it is truly push the button. The pedestrian does have the option to push it or not. If there's no cars there, they can feel comfortable to cross. If they don't feel comfortable, they can push it. And then it will flash for a set amount of time based on kind of a low walking speed. And it isn't a legal requirement to stop. Well, it is a legal requirement to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk, but if that's flashing and there's no pedestrian there, then the cars can proceed.
Okay, makes sense. Is your presentation over, or are we interrupting you?
No, this is fantastic. Was I think one of my next slides was questions.
I have
This is
one other
perfect.
question, but I didn't want to like derail you if you were still in the middle of your presentation.
The only
My other
thing I
question
have
was
left
debris
is,
and trash.
so the debris and trash is something we'll discuss. That's I believe that I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there is a maintenance agreement on the books right now for North Kansas City to maintain the sidewalks under the bridge. I think that was part of the agreement with MoDOT to build those sidewalks. So technically, that is on North Kansas City's budget, I believe. I think there should be some review of some of those agreements to make sure who has actual obligation to maintain that. I would venture to guess that if this is built, then MoDOT would require North Kansas City to maintain it, both the infrastructure, the sidewalks, the barriers, and any kind of trash debris removal. So that would be something to negotiate with MoDOT. But since this isn't a typical installation that MoDOT would do, it would probably fall on North Kansas City to maintain that, remove trash, remove debris, and then maintain the sidewalk and the ramps. And
Aside from maintaining or cleaning up the trash, is there any way to prevent trash from being deposited in that manner? I mean, I assume that most of it's just people throwing it out of vehicles, just like littering. Would the wall, like the Jersey barrier, help prevent that? Would lighting help that if people feel like they're not in a dark tunnel where you can just chuck stuff out the window? I mean, is there something we can do to be proactive to keep it from? I've actually gone under here myself multiple times and seen mattresses and all kinds of crazy stuff, furniture items and
Yeah.
bags of, like, entire bags of trash. And so is there something we can do that's more proactive instead of just cleaning up trash?
yeah, that's a challenge for any community. Illegal dumping is a challenge everywhere. I do think that with more activity out there, if there's more people walking, more people biking, and with the brighter lights, I do think that would likely discourage some of that. Beyond that, it's really an enforcement issue, and then unfortunately a maintenance issue after the fact. I do believe that this design would probably help with that a little bit, but I don't think it'll solve the issue.
I didn't know, this might be a stupid question. I'm good at those. Is there like a higher barrier that would prevent people from chucking trash over the barrier, where it's actually like covering the, pedestrians essentially?
There wouldn't be a higher barrier as such. You could install a wall. I think that'd be very expensive, and MoDOT probably wouldn't approve it. But you can put fencing on top of a Jersey barrier like that. So there could be some option for some kind of decorative fencing. You often see that along the sides of trails or along the sides of bridges where there's an iron railing of some sort on top of the Jersey barrier. So there could potentially be some option for that.
Fencing's a good idea. And then just for clarification, how tall is a Jersey barrier?
They are 3.5 feet typically. I think a Jersey barrier like this would be 3.5 feet. Some of the ones on interstates are 54 inches, whatever that is, 4.5 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think these would be about.
All right, take us through the rest here.
Okay. And we do have this model here. If you do want to look at, we have the videos, have the pictures, but if there's something specific you want to look at, we can always look at that. I did want to point out one thing with this that we didn't really highlight, in that because the sidewalk is moved out to here with the barrier, that does mean that the sidewalk on the outside and the barrier can be removed behind the bridge columns. I'm sure you've all noticed how many times those have been hit. They are just completely destroyed, scuffed up beyond repair in some places. There doesn't appear that that's any kind of life safety issue today with injury crashes or fatal crashes, but it certainly is a nuisance. And it's certainly challenging for freight, as Mr. Shaper brought up, that trucks often track the back of their trailer and hit that with their back wheels. So that would be potentially one benefit to freight movement in the area as well.
They'll hit whatever you put there.
So I'm sure all of you are wondering the $1 million question, or I should say the $2.52 million question, is how much will all this cost? We did put together cost estimates. Keep in mind these are based on conceptual plans, and also that obviously we're in kind of a state of inflation right now, and it's kind of anybody's guess what the prices will be next month or next year. But we did provide a contingency in this, so this we think is pretty conservative and relatively reasonable if this was constructed the next year or two. But obviously no guarantees are made. So we do have separated costs for professional services, further traffic modeling, further design services, further coordination with MoDOT, getting survey. We need to get actual survey under the bridge to get these dimensions right. There are some issues with stormwater down there where they have some kind of interesting placements of stormwater catch basins that would have to be investigated. So that's $320,000. The shared use path cost is $1.87 million. That is for both sides of the road. I should mention that this could also be built in a phased manner. You could build one side and then build the other side later, but that's the cost for both sides being built. And then we broke out that tunnel lighting cost as well. That's something that could be built now. It could be built later, and that's $337,000. So that total there, $2.52 million, is our best guess estimate as of this time.
Can we do the bottom two and do professional services later?
It might be a bit challenging.
Safer.
Have you come up with any annual maintenance costs, the lighting, the trash pickup, and the whatever else the city would have to?
That's not something we provided estimates for at this time. I think that's a very important thing that we can note in the report, though, that will be certainly a concern for the city moving forward.
Now, back to my previous question. Could that be something MoDOT could be responsible for, though, the lighting aspect of this? Should they have installed lights under there?
I think that will come down to negotiations with MoDOT. It does fall under the tunnel lighting standards. There might be some question of whether this is considered a tunnel because it's skewed in the different configuration of it. My feeling is if the city does push and really wants this, that most likely they would require the city to build and maintain it. But that could be part of the negotiations that go on with MoDOT.
Thank you. Councilmember Patel.
And who is currently responsible for keeping the area clean under the bridge?
As I mentioned, I do believe that the initial agreement to build the sidewalk made North Kansas City responsible for maintenance of the sidewalk.
So it's already an ongoing cost for us. So if we did upgrades like lighting and brought people in, it might be a lower cost and more effective at keeping it clean?
I think that's possible. You would have more pavement. The sidewalks are wider. You have the rapid rectangular flashing beacons that do have electrical service to them. So you're correct. There is a maintenance obligation there today. There may be a slightly expanded maintenance obligation, but it wouldn't be a completely new cost.
And the only other thing I'll comment on is the fencing for trash, I think is a good idea for trash. I worry about visibility though, because to me, having people out and about on their bikes and walking, the safest thing you can do is be able to see everybody. So I would be concerned about cutting off the visibility.
I was going to ask about the maintenance agreement. This one's probably for Anthony here, since I know he's found that agreement. Is that just on the south side sidewalk, or is that the entirety of underneath the bridge? And you can come on up to the microphone here, so everyone else can hear you too.
I think the way ordinance 8998 reads is it's just for the south side, but I think it's,
Just south side?
Yeah.
Because that occurred due to the sidewalk
it had to
extension
do with
one
that,
north.
yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And do you think the tiny street sweeper could fit on
Yeah, I
the
think it
shared
could,
use
yes.
path? Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
There we go. All right, other questions? Quiet over here. No? No? Amy? No? Oh, there we go, see? We can take a positive comment, too. They don't have to be negative or questions. You can just
Yeah, no, I'm just really wowed from what we saw in the focus group times and just kind of going like, oh, let's try to make something work. Like, this is beyond what I honestly thought we were walking into, just sort of like a really jankety sidewalk situation where we just like still have hope and a prayer and just run and play Frogger. This just looks completely different than what I expected. I think it looks phenomenal. I like the piece where, you know, for on-ramps, I don't know if we're in charge of replacing the barriers to the sidewalk on the south side. Okay, because currently, like you pointed out, trucks nail that thing. And that's like where people would walk. And that is an important sort of turn. And this, I think, addresses that immediately. There's a trade-off of just saying, yeah, we're eliminating this or like optimizing this so people can walk and bike. But this, there's nothing changing except for actually widening that on-ramp turn, which I think is going to be advantageous for trucks. I think they'll all be delighted to take a turn and not catch a corner this time. Well, maybe they'll still find a way, but excellent job.
There we go. Thank you. So if we decide to move forward with this, your next step would be to come up with preliminary engineering drawings, right? Or is this on here? Look at that. There we go. You're going to finalize technical report and then develop more detailed engineering.
Yes. Yeah, so these are the next steps. We do have a technical report that includes all the public engagement, all the traffic engineering, all the safety data, and then the cost estimates and all the details. And then likely would not be my next step, but your next step to procure a design professional to move forward with more detailed engineering, more coordination with MoDOT. I should say we've engaged them throughout this process. We've discussed these things with them. They have not provided any kind of approval for this. That's outside their jurisdiction on this type of plan, but they have also not identified any major red flags that would make this concept completely infeasible. I think there's still some work to do with MoDOT to discuss it, to make sure that they would be able to approve it. I think part of those negotiations are going to be discussing cost and maintenance agreements. So I can say they haven't given a hard no, but they also haven't given an approval, so this is not a guaranteed done deal. Again, this is all fully within MoDOT's right-of-way, so this is ultimately up to them to approve the ultimate concept. So you want to develop those detailed engineering designs, the traffic engineering, some of those agreement issues with MoDOT, and then develop that final design and build it.
And the only reason I asked it like that is just, so council will have another opportunity to look at design aspect at some point.
That's absolutely true.
Okay.
Yep.
Councilmember Toll.
I'd like to keep my timeline expectation in check. So let's assume everything goes smoothly. About how long should we expect these next steps to take? And ultimately, about what year would we be able to get started?
That probably has a lot to do with what kind of funding you use. If you did this with all local funds, all North Kansas City funds, that would then probably come down more to the negotiations with MoDOT, how long that would take. I couldn't venture a guess on how long that might take. If you take that out of the scenario, and if this was a North Kansas City road, you procured design for something like this, it would likely take around a year or a little more than a year to design it and get it bid. And then probably about a year or maybe a little less to get it constructed. So one of those critical times will be negotiating with MoDOT. If you did use federal funds, obviously that does throw a lot more bureaucracy into the process, and if you applied for something like surface transportation funds, those funds are already committed for the next 2 fiscal years. So then you'd probably be looking at construction more like 2026. But I think if you did local funds, you might be able to get this constructed maybe in 2024.
That is really helpful. Thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember Seth.
I just want to say thank you for putting the renderings and the live looks together. Like, if we could do that for everything we ever do going forward, like, that's an incredible tool to be able to visualize it in this way.
That's that PSP money at work.
Yes. Man, I love that so
It's kind of
much.
fun, isn't it?
Yeah. I kind of want this program on my computer. I can just cruise around and check out the intersection.
Is that Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, it's me walking around with a
Start plugging
shopping
specific
bag.
people in. Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. Shu, are you looking for anything specific here? Do you need further guidance?
No, I think, and I got very positive feedback, that's my understanding. So we already adopted the budget for this upcoming fiscal year. My understanding, if we wanted to pursue, we're probably either looking at amending it or maybe looking at the next fiscal year, then that I will need some guidance on that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I did want to mention this is a standalone rendering here, so this is part of the project, it's part of deliverables. So we delivered to Mid-America Regional Council and to you at North Kansas City. So if you do have, it is rather graphically intensive, but you will be able to run this on any computer that you'd like. So it is about a 10 gigabyte download. So it's a bit difficult for the transfer, but this is something, to your point, Mr. Smith, that you would be able to use and to show constituents or discuss different options with.
How would one get such a download? Is it available?
We can transfer it using SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint. It can be transferred that way. That's probably the easiest way.
Perfect.
You might have to try the download once or twice, leave it running overnight.
Yeah.
But
Buy a new computer.
Hey, we got good internet around
Yeah.
here, okay?
Yeah, I'll just head down to Data Shack LLC and
Yeah.
plug
Go-
right
go
in.
down to HQ.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Good? All right. Thank you for the presentation with that. We're adjourned.